Hey guys, John here. Today we're in Toxic Biohazard, and today we're making a nice 808 bass. So the left-hand side on this Toxic is the patch that we're going to create, and on the right-hand side is an init preset that we are going to recreate. So without further ado, it sounds like this. Watch your speakers, and here we go. So yeah, really nice low and fat low end. So there's basically a couple different things that we need to keep in mind with the sound. So one, obviously, it's a very low end bass kind of sound. If I keep that in mind, it generally has a long release and there's a little bit of a pitch dive and also distortion. Those main things are going to make this patch here. So we are here on the right hand side and we have a little sine wave. Let's go to reset program just in case over here. And let's increase our volume so we can kind of listen to what we're doing in a little bit here. Because right here on this master, I have it at 13. So I guess we can go to about 13.5 or something like that. So we just have a sine wave. So basically, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. You can do an FM and add distortion, but I kind of like this way with a square and a triangle, or technically a pulse. But anyway, so let's change our first one here from sine, and we're going to have two different pulse waves. We're going to have 1 and 2. Number 2 is a little bit too narrow for this. So we're going to use the pulse wave 1. So first thing we're going to do is drop this down by 1 octave here. Because if you see down here, we do have a good amount of harmonics to work with. Now we're going to filter a lot of those out, but also recreate them again with distortion. You'll see what I'm talking about. So on the second one, let's turn this on, and from sine, let's go to the triangle wave, which is this one here, and also drop this down by 1 octave. And then over here in the mix, where it says 100, which is our first oscillator, let's bring the second one all the way in the mix as well at 100%. So that's kind of our bass core sound here. And keep in mind, since we're making this bass, we don't really want a lot of that low end to get cluttered. So before we go any further, let's change from poly to mono. And let's go down here to our filter. So we're going to go mode, and it's going to be a low pass here. And with Toxic Biohazard, the filter and the distortion are really nice. So this type of sound can really shine in Toxic. So with that being said, let's grab our cutoff and kind of bring this down maybe into the 20s. I think over here I had it at like, what does it say? 19. So 19, 20, around there. And this is going to be a thing to taste once we kind of get things going a little bit. A little bit of resonance goes a long way. So right now we just have this. So we look down here and we have our fundamental. We have a couple harmonics down here, but it's really a little bit too round. Because over here, there's a little bit more of this harmonics down here than we have over here. As you can see it down over here, and it kind of drops away here. So with this being said, we need to reach for this drive knob. And you see here, it's almost past 50%. So take a listen to how different this sound changes. It's pretty close to the harmonic structure. So now we got to kind of change our envelope here. So with this one here, our release is pretty long. I think it was like 5 seconds if I remember. Yeah, 5.6, something like that. It's kind of a long release. And the release and the decay are kind of really up to taste. So depending on what is in your track, maybe you want it to ring out for a long time and it kind of fills out a lot of space, then you're going to want to have a longer release. If you kind of want some short hits, then you kind of back these down a little bit, the release and the decay. And I kind of like leaving these both at about the same value, because sometimes you'll hold the note a little bit longer every time, like you're not going to exactly hit it the same amount of time. So in case you let go too early, the release is going to be the same amount of time, or if you hold it down, the decay is going to be about the same amount of time. So with that being said, our release is about 5.4. That's fine. Let's put our decay about 5.4. And for this kind of sound, the very initial attack can be a little bit too clicky sometimes. So adding a little bit of attack here on the master envelope helps out a little bit with that there. So a little bit goes a long way in that sense. So next thing we need to dial up is going to be a little bit of pitch modulation here. So down over here where it says EFG, let's click this and drag, and it's kind of weird how it just starts in the negative. So I'll just alt click that here and maybe bring this all the way up, because we want to start at a higher pitch and kind of go down. So basically what this is doing is we're controlling the pitch with this envelope down over here. So at this envelope here, we have no attack, and then our decay and release are pretty low. So let's kind of bring these down here, and this is going to be another one to taste. So let's bring this down here, and then absolutely no sustain, because we want to sustain on the actual note that we're playing. We just want a little bit of that pitch change when we initially hit the note, but we want it to settle and hold at whatever we're doing. So you kind of hear what we're doing here. So if we increase this decay here, we can see that pitch dive. And if we let go, it's because our release is really fast, and it kind of just snaps back to that initial state there. So we're kind of doing that, and now this decay is a lot of time. So that's taking 9.778 seconds for that to that pitch to dive all the way down to our note that we play. So we need to kind of speed this up a little bit here. I think on this one it was 0.102. So let's kind of go around over there, something like that. So we're getting a little bit close, so there's a couple things we might want to change here. So with this, I added a little bit of key tracking. Now, you don't really have to have that. It's basically once you go higher up on the notes, the filter's going to open up a little bit more to get a little bit more harmonics in that sound. That's totally up to you if you want to use that. But yeah, thought I'd point that out of there as well. And the resonance is at 13% for the first one. This one's 14. I guess we can change it back to 13. That is fine. And now a little bit for some chorus. So this is kind of a dangerous effect to put on a sound like this, because if we use it too much, then we're going to be having a lot of phase cancellation. It's not going to really be a solid sound. So you really have to be careful. So in this, I have the mix at 15%, and by default comes at 40. So if we drag this down pretty substantially low, maybe 13. Gives it a little bit extra thickness to it, and that's with 2 C's, by the way. So we're pretty close here. So now we want to do a little bit of EQ, and it's kind of nice and toxic that we have a built-in EQ here. So if we turn this EQ on here, I did boost a little bit of 62. Cut a little bit of 125. And we can even add a little bit of 250. And maybe some of the higher frequencies. Because remember, we're adding a little bit of that distortion, that drive over here, to kind of recreate those harmonics based on distortion. And with that, we can always accentuate and push that distortion a little bit more harmonically on different bands for our EQ. So it can really kind of help out really sculpting that sound. Now that's kind of the core basics of the sound. So something to keep in mind if you want to change this into different ways. So obviously the master envelope is going to significantly change. If you want some quick hits or something like that, then dial back the decay and the release. We can also bring the sustain down a little bit as well. So it's not just going to be initially hitting at that. So we have a little bit of attack, and then it kind of sustains at a lower level. Kind of settles in that a little bit. And then our pitch decay here, if we want a little bit more pitch dive, we would just increase this decay here. But I kind of like a little bit lower, just a little bit, kind of a little razzle dazzle of that little splash. And another thing to keep in mind as well is we can always detune these by a little bit. I didn't do it in this one, but take a listen to how this changes sound. And just detuning it by a little bit, it can really help. See how it's almost kind of pulsing? It's kind of just moving the whole time. Now be careful with the detuning. Maybe a 5 can be too much, or 4. It's a really small changes in this here. And then the very last thing to also keep in mind is that we have the drive. So if you want a little bit more distortion in this, you can always add it there, or do some post effects as well, you know, put another compressor on it and also give some more distortion after the fact. You can get a really nice distorted 808 or bass sound, kind of like that. And it depends on how you play it. If you want it just 808 hits, then there you go. Or you can play it like a bass, and sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of glide. But that's totally up to you if you want to add that. So yeah, that's basically the kind of concept, and you can really make this in any kind of synth, really. The whole recipe is 2 oscillators, a square or a pulse kind of, and a triangle. You could use a square as well. You'll get a pretty similar result. Drop those down by an octave, and then do a little pitch modulation and some distortion, bring down the cutoff. And really what makes it sound good, I think, is also the filters that you're sending them through. If you kind of have a bad, lame filter that doesn't really sound that great out there, because there are some pretty subpar filters, it's not going to have really the best sound. But But yeah, so give this a try. Try to make it yourself. If you would like to patch for free, there's a link in the video description below and you can download it. But I do suggest kind of making this a couple times because you're gonna kind of notice a lot of the different subtleties that really kind of make that sound shine. As far as the cutoff, more resonance, a little bit less key tracking, the envelope, the drive, all that kind of stuff as well. So I'm gonna back off this drive just a little bit here and kind of leave us with something kind of like that. And then you decide from there how you want to use that. So yeah, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video, and yeah, hopefully you learned something.